Hi, everybody. Welcome to another IMB panel, this time on Touring USA. The independent music business panels are a partnership between the Ottawa Music Industry Coalition and Edwards Creative Law, made possible with the support of the City of Ottawa and Ontario Creates. We are currently broadcasting out of the unceded territory of the Algonquin people, and we'd like to acknowledge that. Before I pass it on to Tamara Kater, who will be moderating this discussion, I will be posting a question in chat, and would love it if you can type out your answer. And that question is just letting us know whether you're an emerging artist, an artist that's just starting to tour, or an experienced touring artist. So please, if you have the time, type out your answer, and we will be sort of modifying the discussion based on how you respond and the influx of responses. With that, I would love to pass it on to Tamara. Welcome, Tamara.
Hi, welcome. Thank you, Kareem. Thank you, Melanie, for inviting me to moderate this discussion today. It's so nice to be able to talk about touring again. I just want to say that in itself is really exciting. And thank you for starting this conversation. There is never an end to learning how to tour. And for a lot of people, they might be at the beginning of their journey because they were not doing as much touring earlier in the career during the pandemic. And so that's one of the reasons why I've asked Kareem to put that question into the chat, just so that we can kind of see where people are at and direct our questions that way. I want to start off quickly. We've divided this into roughly 10-minute sections. It's a really vast topic to cover in a short amount of time. There'll be some time at the end for questions. I hope to have about 10 or 15 minutes, and I might invite you to drop questions into the chat over the period of this discussion. And Kareem's going to do keep an eye on things. We'll make sure we get back to the question. We don't answer it immediately because it is such a vast topic. We don't want to be skipping around too much, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we answer people's concerns and questions directly. I want to start off really quickly with just 60-second introductions from each of the people here in this discussion. I'll start off myself with a 60-second introduction, and then I've asked people to also kind of just drop in a touring best practice or anything like that to kind of get the discussion started and to give you an idea of what perspective we come from. So you know my name already. I'm an artist manager and have been working in management for 6 years now. Before that, I led a music industry association and worked for festivals. So I kind of watched people come into Canada and then gradually start to help them actually kind of tour more internationally. And my scope really is, as manager, is international. And in terms of my little best practice, I just say, is to really know your market and know where you're going, know where you want to be. With that, I'm going to ask the person who's next to me on my screen to introduce themselves. And Justin, if you don't mind passing off to the person next to you again on your screen when you're done. Over to you, Justin.
Well, certainly. Bonjour, je m'appelle Justin. I live in Philadelphia in the United States. I am a presenter. For the last 8 years, I've been the executive director of the Philadelphia Folk Song Society. We have a music school, a music venue, and a music festival in Philadelphia. We're most well known for our music festival. It is the oldest continuously run outdoor music festival in all of North America. Mariposa, gotcha. And we are thrilled to have that designation. We present a number of Canadian artists. In fact, our festival is usually somewhere in the 10 to 20% of Canadian artists. And that's just because we book the best music that just so happens to be Canadian. So really, really excited to be here and be a part of this panel representing the United States portion of touring. And just the number one thing that I can say to managers, to agents, and to artists is to know what you need, or to ask. because there's so many times where, especially if you're emerging or a first-time artist, to not really ask what you particularly need. And more than anything, it's important to really have those things on the table out of the gate. Usually there's never a deal breaker there, but just being able to communicate what your needs are thoroughly, succinctly, even pre-PDF'd and ready for somebody who's willing to book you is delightful. And I'm going to pass it over to the person who is next to me on the screen, which is Mariel Buckley.
Oh, thank you, Justin. My name is Mariel Buckley. I'm a folk kind of alt country Americana singer-songwriter, and I live in Alberta, currently at Edmonton. I'm kind of mid-level touring. I've done quite a bit of it, but I'm always trying to do more of it. I've done a few US dates here and there, and I'm leaving actually tomorrow on a 20-date US tour with Matt Anderson all down the West, through into LA and Texas, where I've never been, so I'm excited about that. And for my touring practice, I would say have an adaptable live show with a variety of formats and sizes, because when you're breaking a new market, you can't always bring the full band and you can't always bring what you want to bring, but you should have a strong solo, duo, trio kind of lined up to break those markets all the same. And I'm going to pass it over now to Morris.
Hi, everyone. Great tips there, Mariel. My name is Morris Obo. Artist name Asuquomo. I'm a hip hop rapper, currently going as an Afro punk recording and touring musician. I want to give a tip. It would be know what your goals are before you go on a particular tour. Know how those goals relate to your specific level in the industry, either established or emerging, or just getting comfortable with performing for the first time. If you happen to find yourself in a touring situation, set certain goals that directly affect where you are in your journey, and it would make sense at the end of the day, however it pans out.
Wow, thank you, everyone. That is a really hot start. Thank you. Already a lot to think about and chew on. The next thing I had, we didn't really share this in the chat, but we are going to cover strategy and routing next. Then we're going to get into how to get gigs, then immigration, and then getting out an audience. Those are kind of the angles of discussion that we've got going here. So if there's anything that's not covered there that you want to hear about, again, drop it into the chat. It seems that we've got a wonderful range of people joining us today, which is amazing. I encourage you all to help each other. That's one of the first things that I always offer in a panel to artists. Is one of the best things you can do is actually collaborate with other artists. Managers can swap intel, can swap artists, can build roster collaboration, and artists can do that, pardon me, long before they have a booking agent. They can decide to collaborate together. Sorry, I have a bit of a tickle in my throat. I'm gonna pass it now over to Mariel. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Mariel. I'm gonna mute myself and get some water. But what's some of the strategy that's helped you? I know you have a really great touring career in several markets, and I'd love if you'd share some of the kind of like strategy related to how you build a tour when you think of touring, and then what's the routing kind of equation that kind of comes along with that. Thanks so much, Mariel.
Yeah. No, I think for me, being in folk and Americana, we started with my first record campaign in 2018, and I knew that because the States is such a hot market for the kind of music that I do, that we would probably try and break in with some radio. So we spent, some money on a college and campus campaign that did really well. And then we kept all of those track reports and kind of saw where I was doing lots of charting. And then I said, okay, well, I should probably tour to those spots. And then the following summer, I had seen Justin at Breakout West in Alberta or Kelowna, and he had invited us to go to Philly Folk Fest. So we lined up a few of those, chart histories and went and did the Philly Folk Fest. We played a show in New York and then drove back to Lethbridge. And ever since then, I've kind of just I've kind of just tried to build a market with releases prior to touring there. So you can do that obviously with your socials. There's lots of ways to engage with folks in the markets that you want to break into. And then obviously by keeping things like charting history and all that stuff for your analytics, you can see where the folks will want to come out. And so whenever I'm planning a tour, I'm usually just trying to do it in small chunks so that I don't go broke. But yeah, mostly it's just been kind of seeing where the music is connecting with people and then trying to build on that by, you know, talking with agents or talking with other artists or chatting with whoever's in that area, and then, you know, trying to make something happen that way.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I got a glass of water and feeling much better now. Thanks so much, Mariel. I think that's exactly kind of, you know, the type of answer that at least I was thinking would be helpful to people, so that, you know, I think one of the things that I see some artists get a little bit lost with is I have to tour. And you do have to tour, but if you just tour for the sake of touring, if you just book yourself a bunch of gigs, one, it's kind of harder to get those gigs. And if you don't have a strategy behind it, and that kind of, is it related to a radio campaign, a release? What are you trying to do? Are you opening for someone? Where are you going? How far away is it? You know, are you touring close to home? Is it 2 hours away across the border? Is it on the other side of the continent, as you described when you went to Philadelphia and New York from Lethbridge? I think those are all kind of things that are really important to keep in mind, because you can get into a lot of financial difficulty. Touring is the hardest thing I think that musicians do. It's really hard on the body, and it can be very challenging to people's mental health to be out there night after night and far from home. So doing it so that it brings you the most benefit is so important. Morris, I'd love to hear about your experience and how you've approached. I know that you've been in the United States a lot. I don't know if you've toured a lot beyond there. Please share what you know and where you've been.
For sure, Tamara. So I've had some experience touring in around, say, 2015, 17, where I was booked to be on a bill of around maybe 5 to 7 other artists at my level at the time, pre-emerging. So there were cases of being in performing at Guelph University or UTM Mississauga or an Oshawa, and we would sell out, and it was because whoever had the local crowd was put at the top of the bill, and that was supposed to make things come together organically, and that happened at every stop because it was a tour that was built that way. So after that experience, I decided to put myself in a more networking situations that I could leverage for one reason or the other. And as opposed to what Mariel said on the touring experience, my response is a bit more unorthodox for more independent structured artists. The reason for the most recent tour I did was to leverage off of musicians in my sphere who are buzzing at the time and who are geared to have a trajectory of releases in 2023. So I wanted to position myself. Also, I have an album year coming up in 2023. So it made sense to get conversations popping up in different parts of the globe in my interest. So what I did was I located 4 or 5 artists that I wanted to open for as an opening act on their touring in Canada, and they have US dates as well. So when I sent my pitch deck, I included the US dates that I was able to make myself in terms of travel, get myself there. And then I gave my resume and my background in building audiences in places like Montreal, Toronto, and the rest of that. So it was a cold pitch to some degree, but I had my goals clearly stated why I would be a good fit to get the crowd hyped up for the main performance, because that's fundamentally the role of an opening act, right? It's not your tour, it's not about you, it's to make sure the main set goes splendidly well. But you have to localize and say what you're trying to gain if you're pitching to a manager or a tour manager or a venue. I want to share this. My first tour experience was in 2015, 17, thereabout. And then this is a tour I put together. pre-COVID in 2020, and a week before the dates would happen, that's when the lockdown happened. So that tour didn't happen. So like take a step back if you have to. If you have to like give it a year to get it right, make sure that the plan that you're looking at it's somewhat believable and you could pull it off. And then you know what, just put your all into it and go for it. So that's basically how I've approached the tour I did recently. I also want to mention the importance of leveraging grants for touring activities and travel. I was able to apply to the Canada Council for the Arts for the most recent tour. But what was interesting is before I submitted the application, I called and I was told to take it away from Arts Abroad and put it in Arts Across. So you really have to make that call to those offices and explain really what you're trying to get done and get a local answer that works for you. So just to go quickly through a list of strategies I have down here is I had a goal. I had a goal for connections. I had a stage list that I had present for all the shows that I ended up playing at. I was conscious of like recording media. I had prior conversations about tickets included in my pitch. So the pitch was very, very well thought out. So all the follow-ups that I had with each promoter that engaged me, I was able to leverage a show out of it at the end of the day. So it's very important to have your bigger picture goal and stick to what you've planned to achieve from the tour. In terms of executing and planning, be flexible, take care of your health, don't overestimate your strengths, and have at least one more person or a team you're working with that you can always give a call at any time throughout the touring days or weeks or months, just so you never, really hit like a low point that makes you back out or something. But that's all I have to share for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Morris. That was amazing. Thanks so much. I realized that I skipped over funding in my list, and that was definitely an oversight of mine. So I'm gonna maybe just add that in at the end and/or drop some information in the chat. That could take up an entire panel in and of itself, is finding funding for touring. But it is something that it's very difficult to get your wagon rolling without the funding to help you cover until you have enough of an audience. Mel says you've got another panel coming up, and so hopefully that will be able to answer more deeply some of the questions about funding. But there are several funders. I'll drop their names into the chat. I thought maybe we could segue. Sorry, did I miss that? Okay. I thought maybe we could segue over to Justin here. And Justin, if you might wrap together, as I bet you can, kind of a little bit of what you look for in terms of an artist and their strategy and their routing as they're coming towards Philadelphia. And I know you've met Canadians who are pretty far afield and they end up coming and playing. And so I'd love to hear from you about that. And then wrapping, also segueing into how to get the gigs, so you've got a good strategy. And now how do we start to actually get the gigs when we don't have a US booking agent? We're not touring yet internationally. We're just getting the wagon rolling. How does that work?
Thanks, Tamara. So starting with how I work with artists who are looking to tour from Canada to the United States. First and foremost, we have to have the discussion about how and when they're looking to cross the border and come down. Of course, the visa conversation, because if you are coming down and you are playing in the States for a ticket that is sold, you most certainly need to have some sort of work visa, or it can cause lots and lots of issues, even more for you than it does for me, which is truly unfortunate. So that being said, there's a number of different ways to go about doing that. And again, visas are a whole other panel, but looking to see what's going to be most beneficial and financially viable for the artists that we're looking to work with. Now we have our big festival. It's the third weekend in August every year. And with our festival, we are not even the least bit afraid of emerging. Even if you've only played 3 shows in Canada, will be your first show in the US. We are not afraid of that at all. We've been around since 1961, and we have the privilege of having just a built-in audience of tens of thousands of people. If I booked a box of cats to open up on the stage and just kind of play around, people would still come. So that being said, I want to make sure that instead of cats, we've got really talented artists in front of them to build their market here in the States. It's really important for me to be able to get Canadian artists in front of my audiences at the festival, because then in turn, I'll be able to bring those same artists that I love and that my audiences begin to love back to play in the venue, or for a concert series or so on and so forth. The other thing is that the Philadelphia Folk Song Society does have one underwritten concert series where we're able to pay a flat guarantee once a month, and I've utilized that to do a lot of presenting of Canadian artists, because a lot of times when you're touring especially in the States, actually, let's just say anywhere anymore, guarantees aren't a guarantee. It's something that unfortunately died along with COVID. And so a lot of things that were kind of in place as ways to have musicians kind of have that parachute aren't there as much anymore, especially for emerging artists. So it's really important to do smart things such as what Morris was saying, which is to work with maybe an artist that's already established in an area. I've loved putting and helping to put together United States artists and Canadian artists, where the US artists will tour and open for a Canadian artist in Canada, and then they can come down and tour and open for the American artist in the States. Having that kind of cultural exchange does more than just cross-pollinate great music. It really helps to utilize and to capitalize on the on top of the existing tour goals. But when somebody is approaching me and saying, hey, I really want to come play the Philadelphia Folk Festival, my first question is, are you able to get here and come across the border? And if not, what do we have to do to make that happen? Now, there's a couple of different ways that we can go about doing that, either by helping to find some dates to pad out around us, to which, been doing this for 8 years. I've got a whole spreadsheet of every other festival that's stateside in my region in the months and weeks leading up to and leading after my event. There's also a number of really great venues in the tri-state area. The nice thing about touring the northeast part of the United States, if you drive a couple of hours in a new direction, you will hit brand new markets, brand new venues, brand new everything. In Canada, sometimes you drive a couple of hours in any direction, you hit more trees. So as such, try to make it as easy as humanly possible for people to come down and to be a part of what it is that we're trying to work on and showcase your talents in front of our audiences. So to that end, it's all about, where else are you looking to perform? There's some places that are really, really engaging and excited to have emerging up through New York and into Connecticut, even down in Baltimore through DC, and especially down in Nashville. But have you done that legwork, or is it something that I'm going to have to help you out with and give you a couple of names and hints and contacts and go from there? But if you are looking to just come stateside, just to play my event, especially with some of the news that's come out in the last 72 hours in reference to visas, I'm going to tell you we need to go back to the drawing board on your tour goals and try to really build a tour, because again, this is the most expensive thing that an artist can do. And while I want your time coming to Philadelphia and playing in front of our audience to be an investment in audience building, I want to also make sure that it's financially viable for everybody.
Thanks so much, Justin. That was very exhaustive. I really appreciate it. I think some of the things we're hearing here is to really know your data and to understand where you're going. As Mariel said, she was looking at her radio charting. Morris was looking at where other people were touring and where he would be a good fit as an opener and would build his audience. And as Justin was saying, knowing the area around where you have one anchor date, how can you build, et cetera, is really key. I might just kind of sail right through here on how to get the gigs, and we can come back to it if we want, because immigration has come up a couple times, and Byron's very kindly dropped something in the chat, which I haven't had a chance to look at, but I'm sure is super helpful because Byron's awesome. And that is about immigration. And the first thing I'm going to say is never, ever, ever cross the border without your papers in order. And by that, I mean, don't try to sneak in. Don't try to say you're volunteering. Don't try any of that. Apologies if this is a memo from Planet Obvious, but occasionally some misunderstandings get out there. People like, oh, I did it once and it was fine. It just don't. You'll get barred. First, I think that for at least, I think for 5 years is the minimum, and it can just really, really ruin your career. So don't do that. Be really careful about what you're allowed to bring across and how to declare it and all those sort of things. Make sure your paperwork is in order. In order to get yourself into the United States, it really depends on whether you're going down to showcase, which means that no one from the public is paying to come see you. If someone is buying a conference badge to come in and see you, that doesn't count. But if anyone can buy a ticket and stand and watch you play, then you need what's called a P2 visa. In order to get a P2 visa, Byron's put, I'm sure a lot of the information there. It's not impossible, but it's a lot of work. And you need one engagement per 45 days to get a year-long visa. In other words, you need to keep crossing the border to get the visa to work. And sometimes that is expensive to go down and play one gig and then come back, and then 45 days later go back and play one gig. So working with US presenters such as Justin, who knows the system really well, knows how to help you, knows what can be allowed on a P2 visa. It's not only gigs every 45 days, there are media appearances, sometimes count, etc. But the upshot of it is that a P2 visa is a necessary thing. You have to learn how to get with it. You have to learn how to submit it, get your paperwork in order, work with the presenters. And the sooner you familiarize yourself with the mechanics of the P2, the better off you will be. One of the most common ways to get a P2 is to go through the Canadian Federation of Musicians. If you're ever at a conference and you see Leona White, she is the executive director of the Canadian Federation of Musicians, and they do a ton of work helping musicians cross the border. They're also down in Washington, DC, literally down there later this week to try to implore the US government to not increase visa processing fees, because the fees can be substantial. After you have had a career and your wagon's been rolling for a while, there are some other visa options that can be open to you. So even when you're planning your P2 visa, look at it, look a little bit further down the road and try to understand what might open up a different visa category to you. And kind of, again, have that strategic long-term approach. But starting off with the P2 visa, Mariel, do you have anything to offer in terms of the P2 or other border crossing experience without any war stories? Because we don't want to scare people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yes, certainly I do. I did my first P2 app to go to Philly and New York on my own. So that one was quite a challenge. I would give yourself as much time as humanly possible. If you have more than 6 months, take it, because you do not ever want to pay a rush fee. I thankfully have not had to do that, but I know lots of buddies who forked out way too much cash in US dollars because they were not on top of their shit. Second thing, get your union dues up to date. It's like such a dumb, weird stipulation because, you know, I don't know how many musicians unions are actually doing a whole lot for us, but it is important to pay your union dues because they will request that they be up to date for your application. Yeah, and definitely contact someone at the AFM or the CFM who can help you with the application process. They're all very knowledgeable and helpful. Have your paperwork sorted at the border, ready to hand over. Don't dilly-dally because they're kind of dinks. And if you have any expensive gear or you're bringing, you know, any kind of console or a bunch of guitar pedals or merch, make sure that your value is under, I think it's 10K, but do your research on how expensive the shit you're bringing in is, where it's made, how much the gear is worth, because they're really sticky on that. And merch especially, they're now starting to be even stickier about stuff that's not made in the US or is made in the US. And they will, I just went on a run with the Bros Landreth in June, and they had all their merch shipped back to Canada because of a technicality on who made their shirts. So silly stuff like that can really hold you up. So definitely, read through all the stuff, but have your stuff together is all I would say.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Mariel. Mo, do you have anything about border crossing and visas to share with us?
No, not quite. I did not have to show a P2 visa. My travel was at the border, if at the flight border, if you get asked if you're going to be working, and the answer is no, because in fact you're supporting and you're not selling tickets that you keep for yourself, that checks out. I did get held up one time for about 30 minutes to double check my answers. So I had to get my story straight on from that point. But it became clear that you cannot mix up your goals. You cannot be supporting and not supporting at some point. You have to just have it straightened out before you engage the tour.
Yeah. I'd say, Mo, it might be that some people's interpretations were that you might have needed a P2. I'm glad you made it without it. But if the paying public is watching you play an instrument, you need a visa, and I'd be happy. But if Byron wants to confirm that in the chat, I'd be grateful. But that's my understanding of the difference. So places like South by Southwest get very confusing because you're there showcasing. But if the public can buy a ticket to see it, it doesn't matter if you're getting paid or not. It doesn't matter if you're volunteering. You need to, unfortunately, have the P2, and it can be a real bummer for some people to have that experience. Justin, do you want to chime in just from the presenter's point of view on what you've done to support P2 and in general, any comments about Canadians coming across the border and their immigration?
Sure. So what I will say is that it's not just me, there are other friendlies in the United States that know exactly what a unnecessary hurdle this is. This should not exist. This is all bureaucratic red tape that really is just taking money away from artists, and it really is an absolute shame. And there are a number of presenters that know that and get the joke. As such, a couple of us have been running what I lovingly refer to as the Canadian Underground Railroad for quite some time. So helping to have Canadian artists get their P2 letters in order. What's nice and is that because I have a festival, because I have a venue, because I have a school, now that hasn't come up yet. If you are a teaching artist, a great way to supplement your income on the road is by doing classes, workshops, education, going into schools and doing work, et cetera, et cetera. Also having a concert series, sometimes I'm able to take up to 4 of those 45 dates, 45-day increments. So as such, I may not always have all 4 of those come to fruition, wink. But by having those, you're able to submit it, get to the P2, and then come down, and then we're able to kind of rebook as needed. And when we rebook as needed, you need to report that back. But we're really excited to help artists get down because, again, it's a hurdle that just doesn't need to be there. So as such, there's been plenty of times where I've seen an artist at a music conference, which is frankly where I go shopping for Canadians more than anything. I'll go and I'll see an artist and say, yep, I absolutely need to present you in the next, year or 3. And I'll always ask, what is your plan? What are your goals? When do you want to come stateside? There isn't a single person that I've been like, you now need you at my festival in 6 months. We're going to do it, right? Great. I don't want to put anyone in that position. I know that sometimes these conversations can take time, and having those conversations with other persons, to make sure that it is financially viable for you to get stateside. So there are artists that spoke to, and then in the next year we're able to get them down. And there's artists that I've been talking to for 3 to 5 years, and we're still working on it. So it's one of those things that's also important to keep those engagements with presenters, just letting them know what's going on, what your plans are. And frankly, with those that know what the joke is, asking for help. Because we most certainly can connect you with other presenters that understand what a P2 letter is. Because I'll be very honest, no matter how many times I scream it from the rooftops to some of my peers, some of my colleagues, they just don't get the joke.
Thank you, Justin. And I think some of the things that happen when a presenter doesn't get the joke is they don't understand that you need a contract issued 12 months ahead of the time that you're going to show up, and you need that contract for your visa application. Or that you might need to write a contract, but then you might need to change the date a little bit later because you need the contract for the visa, but then your routing might change. There's a bunch of things like that that really mean that as part of touring, really developing the network of contacts that you work with for presenters is key, not just to get the gigs, but they are really going to be the people who buy in early to helping you get across the border and build a career. And building those relationships is really key. We didn't really touch on this in terms of anything specific in the discussion topics, but going to conferences and building that network. And I'm the first to say that I think conferences have to be careful on how much they charge people, et cetera. And there's a lot of, it very quickly becomes pay to play and a lot of stuff like that. At the same time, one of the hidden benefits of going to a booking conference and hanging around longer, even if you're only playing one night, staying the 3 nights, paying the extra for the hotel for a few nights, is to build those relationships with presenters, is to be able to reach out to someone and say, hey, I just need 1 gig. Can you give me a gig on a Sunday so that I have my visa application balanced out properly? Can you write me a letter? Those people later on can write you different letters that help you obtain visas that last for 3 years instead of 12 months, which is what the P2 lasts. So all of those things really add up to not only just the gig itself, but the support network and the network of, like I say, early adopters who are going to help you build your career. The next thing I have here is the last point, and we're getting up almost to question time. We have about 5 minutes for this. And I'm happy to come back to any topic if we were going a little bit too quickly, if anybody wants us to dig into something a little bit more. Now is a great time to drop questions or anything you want us to elaborate on into the chat. And the last thing I had here on this list is to talk about getting out an audience, because you can tour once, and if nobody comes out to the shows, it's a lot harder actually to tour the second time than maybe it was the first time, because you tried it once and it didn't work as well. And that's not to say that everybody goes out and the first tour works perfectly. It rarely does. It's a work in progress. You build momentum, you learn. Every career is differently, every career evolves differently. But I'd love to hear from people. Maybe Morris, you could lead this one off, is just, how you get people out to gigs. And I think some of the best practices work whether you're touring far away or close to home. So I'd love to hear about that.
Okay. This is one of the ones where you have to get creative. 1 second here. I did have something in my notes where I said you have to go back to the same channels where you've always promoted music and put music out, and try to make sure you maximize those channels that you already have a way to get to your audience. Make sure those channels are maximized. And then if you've pulled data, look for DJs who could play your sets in those cities, and that could be something that works. I know I had a tour manager helping me out, Black Market Creative, and they reached out to a DJ such that when I got to the venue in Seattle, the DJ walked up to me and identified himself and said, "Oh, we have an interview booked for each other," right? So that was really interesting to see how the connection can be made prior before you get to the cities. Also,
Awesome song.
I opened for Omale for 2 US dates, and his Toronto dates got postponed. But for his Toronto dates, I was able to speak to someone on Live Nation and got a link to sell my own tickets. So regardless of the postponement coming in, I did go through the process of getting my own links to sell tickets to my own fan base in Toronto, which is where I have the most leverage at the time of the tour. So if you have to do some legwork, if you have to put up some posters in the cities where those kind of efforts would get a response, then that's what you do. And then if you need to collaborate with a big DJ, the DJ that I collaborated with in Seattle is an Afro bashment DJ that played, Afro fusion music every other Friday. So it was very natural for him to sound like he was in agreement with the promoter and myself that this would be a great experience to attend. So I did get people walk up to me that attended because they caught wind that I would be there and introduce themselves. So these are all different regular channels of promoting myself that I felt that would have a response, even if the people were far away from me and I was trying to reach out. That did really convert. So I just wanted to mention that.
I mean, that's great. Thank you so much. Sorry, my mute button was on.
I want to add
Mariel,
something.
Yeah.
My touring with Omale, how that started off was I attended Afro Nation in April of 2021, and I was in the WhatsApp texting the manager saying I would like to meet, and they gave me the address of the hotel. And I met them and I pitched myself after a handshake as an artist that would like to open for his artist when they came to North American dates. And that just broke any barriers that would have come up, and they were able to just trust my word on from that point, such that when they had their dates figured out, they reached out to me asking, what dates did you say you were going to confirm again? We're coming. So it's something that if you just put the work behind it, you could see some really great results.
That's awesome. And also speaking again to that artist, the power of the artist to connect directly with each other, to trade audiences, to trade opening spots. And I've seen so much good come of that. So thank you for that, Morris. Mariel, what about you? What has helped you get the people out to the gigs after you've gone to the the towns where the radio was playing your music?
Don't ask me. They don't come still. No. Well, it kind of depends. I mean, the way that I kind of first broke in was I met an artist at a Canadian festival at the Winnipeg Folk Fest, Sarah Shook, and we got on really well as people, because that's kind of, I think that if you're not always comfortable like finding the manager and doing that legwork, sometimes just the connection of like, we're just nice people who seem to get along, that kind of branches into lots of stuff. So me and Sarah kind of linked up and ended up doing 3 dates just south of Alberta. So kind of the initial way that I thought about getting people to my own stuff and getting people on board for my sort of slow entry was seeing the kind of folks that came to Sarah Shook and the Disarmers shows, and then seeing, our audiences cross-pollinate pretty good. And I think everybody's kind of said it, but it's really important. No matter where you play in the world, there will be things that are similar in the groups of people coming to see you, and knowing what those things are is huge, because when you're putting the word out, I'm going on with Matt Anderson tomorrow, and like our crowds are probably very different, but I know the people in each town. I know I have a weird, like there's nurses in my demographic, and there's really sad kind of gay people. So I'll find those people and they'll come to the show. It's really just about knowing your audience, because they exist in every town, and knowing who you're trying to connect with and why. Another thing obviously is connecting with those artists and trying to get some support gigs. So, the Sarah Shook stuff was super organic. We just stayed buds and stayed in touch. I didn't put that much pressure on, but then I met their US agent last time they were at a festival, and they just kind of continued to bring us down for little opportunities here and there. And then the other thing I would say is to not be shy on investing in things like PR with your album campaign. So, it's all very expensive, and grant funding is awesome in Canada. But when you've got a release lined up and a reason to tour and a reason to break a new market, it really is important to pay for PR in the market you want to break, because those people on the ground, especially in the industry, that are going to write little reviews and post your shit wherever, those are people that are going to get new listeners onto your Spotify and then out to the shows. And the last thing I would say is just have your Spotify and all your streaming crap connected with like your bands in town or whatever you're using to sell tickets. Have those things linked up, because as new listeners come in, then if they're, if they like you and then if they see you're coming to town, I've had so many people come to shows just through that sort of algorithmic crap. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
That's awesome. Justin, over to you. What have you seen that's worked well?
Something that is really, really nice and that we've seen a lot of engagement with is when we just get an artist to turn their phone forward facing and they just say into the phone how excited they are for the gig. It seems like the littlest, tiniest thing, but when we are able to put that up on our stories or on our socials, it really is something that we see the most engagement with. Beyond that, live video. People who are coming to see live music, they want to see what live video looks like. So to that end, you really want to make sure that you are having someone at your live events recording you so that you can put your best foot forward. As such, when you've got really, really great opportunities, such as at festivals or in spaces and places where you see that little red light and you're being recorded, go up, be shameless, say, hey, can I get a copy of that? Because for whatever reason, a lot of venues and festivals don't offer it, but they record it for their own either archives or they streamed it or so on and so forth, where it's really easy for them to get that and for you to then take it, cut it, and put that up. You don't have to put it up publicly. You can put it up in a private area, but having those that are at the ready for us to download and share as part of your electronic press kit or what have you, really, really key. So for me, it's something that is just, again, forward facing on the phone, just saying how excited you are, hoping people come out, so on and so forth. Be natural and engaging. And then beyond that, live video of what you've done at other concerts and shows, just to really get people hyped and being like, oh, this is what it's going to be like. All right. Oh, wow. I really love seeing this audience connect. I really love, the fact that they're singing right to me, even though I'm not even there. I have to come see this artist. So as such, again, those are the 2 things that you just want to make sure that you've got in your arsenal.
That's great. Thank you so much, Justin. I want to point out it's still open for questions over here on chat. I do want to point out that Arthur McGregor has dropped some really wonderful information about how to voice your protest, for lack of a better word. There is a link there where you can learn more about the proposed P2 fee increases. They're substantial. It's a little hard for us to tell you, to go from like $400 to $800, because it depends on the size of the band and a bunch of variables like that. But suffice to say, it's hard to get a P2 for under $1,000 right now once you've paid the union dues and the fees. The union dues are great and totally supporting great things and all of the services the union offers. But the processing fees are around half of that, and they are set, I think, to nearly double. And they are, that's only for regular processing, which takes 60 days. So that means you need to get your paperwork in 60 days before you want to cross the border. If it's faster than that, it is in the thousands of dollars right now. And if you need a visa processed quickly, it's not unthinkable to have to pay $3,000 to $5,000. And all of those funds that I'm talking about are in US dollars for the most part. So when I say $425 processing fee, multiply that by the exchange rate of 1.4 and some bank draft fees, is really, really prohibitive at a time when touring is still precarious. Guarantees are not guarantees anymore. So it's really important to connect with the union and to voice your concerns. If we push back hard enough in a diplomatic way and say, hey, this is how this really affects me. The government has been known to reconsider this. It's worked before. So I encourage you to figure out how you can support that initiative that the union is mounting right now to keep the fees reasonable. I just want to see, Kareem, I'm not sure if we have any other questions, but I see a question here from Nathan about artist managers needing a P2. That's a great question. I wish Byron were on the call to offer his opinion. I'm not a lawyer, he is. That's there. He says, no, they don't. That being said, I am an artist manager who has been asked tricky-ish questions about what they're doing, and Byron's chiming in time with me. If you are going to really just support your artist, be there strategically, meet people backstage, lend moral support, be there to meet other managers, be part of the industry. No, you don't. If you're going to sell merch for your client, if you're going to pick up a box of merch and unload it from the van and bring it into the venue, you're getting into a murky area. So just be really careful about, Byron also points out here, if you're a manager and you're performing, you can't get around the P2. So no funny business that way. If you're on stage, people are watching you and they paid money as the public, not industry, to be in that venue, you need a P2. But I have been asked trick questions. I find them tricky anyways at the border about whether I'd be signing any contracts on behalf of my artist, whether I was going to be selling merch, whether I was going to be folding t-shirts. No, 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 just no, you're not doing that. And that's something to be really careful about. Melanie's also pointing out very rightfully, the entire band, all performers need a P2. And that's why I was saying it gets tricky to estimate how much cost it is, because it's per band member, per musician on stage that you need to pay these fees. And if they increase, it's going to, again, be even more difficult. It's already pretty heavy. The fees are substantial. And the gigs are not always covering for that at the moment. I'm not sure if there are any other questions, or if anyone from OMIC wants to chime in with some questions or add anything.
I don't believe there are any other questions written down in the chat at this moment.
Justin is raising his hand.
Okay, there we go.
I just wanted to put a finer point on it and actually bring back something that Mariel said earlier, which was being able to right size your tour, right sizing the support that you have, and that goes for even when you're submitting. If a Canadian artist reach out to me and says, "Hey, I'm really interested in playing," and they send me this great live video, but they're playing with an 8-piece band, I'm immediately going to go like, "Nope, too expensive. That's a lot of P2s. Not happening. Not happening. Not happening." So being able to really say, hey, I'm great, solo, duo, trio, or even more so than that, being able to network and find people stateside that can support with you, that are great side people, that are going to be able to pick up and help you shine on stage. Because as much as you want to bring your full band down each and every time, it's tough. So absolutely look for people that are stateside, or if you are touring with another artist and you've put a tour together, support each other. I mean, it really, really does not make any difference to most audiences if they're seeing you both up on stage the entire night, and one has, somebody at the front of the mic and somebody at the side, picking and playing. It's really something that, you can mix and match a number of different ways. But honestly, one of the hottest tips came right out of the gate, which is right sizing your act. And I think you've heard that echoed. And it's not just for getting those P2s and getting people but across the border, but it's even for presenting yourself to me. I mean, I will never forget, saw an incredible act at the Music Newfoundland and Labrador conference, who was like, I really want to come to the States, and had 10 people behind him. So I turned my brain off. And then at the end of the weekend, they were like, oh, no, I usually play solo. And I'm like, then why did you show me you with 10 people? So think about when you're presenting yourself and how you're presenting yourself. If you are doing kind of those showcases and conferences, take one for you. Do it with the full band, but then take one where it's just you and one person, or just you solo, so that people can see that. That's really going to make a statement as well. So just wanted to get that out there while I could.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. And also, I've never seen the hand raised before like that on a panelist, so I'm really grateful you did that. Team Mike, is there anything else that we have here? I still see some participants, but I'm not sure if they are genuinely raising their hands or if they're just waving hello before they are encouraged to leave the chat.
Yeah, I wanted to pipe in just quickly because I know we're getting around Folk Alliance time, and I don't know if there's anybody on the call that is going to Folk Alliance, but I figured while we're talking about touring the USA and we're talking about border crossing, if it's your first time going over the border for a conference, there's also some important considerations in terms of merchandise that you're bringing over. If you're bringing something over that is not for sale, each individual item needs to have a sticker on it that says not for sale or for radio use only. So if you're going to a conference, you're not intending on selling the merch, you can still get caught at the border and refused entry if they think that you're going to sell merch. So few things like that I just wanted to maybe touch on, and I know Tamara has a bunch of information on that. Any other stuff that you can think of just really quickly in the next kind of couple minutes for people going to Folk Alliance in particular?
Yeah, well, definitely that merch question is a very good one. The reason is you say you're going in on a B1, which is that you promise you're not performing, but if you carry sealed merch with you, you kind of confuse the border guards. And so by ripping off the packaging or whatever and saying not for resale is a way of kind of proving to them that it's just for promotional use only. And many people have been caught in that as well. I think for Folk Alliance, I will be there. Maven's Music is running a room 629. Drop by, say hello. I love meeting new people, and I really, really, really miss meeting new people because we haven't been in person a lot these past few years. And it's one of the beautiful things about conferences is making new friends. So please come say hello if you're there. In terms of the border, just getting really straight with what you are entitled to cross under a B1 visa, and a B1 visa, there's no piece of paper that's given to you. The P2 is a piece of paper. It's now, I think it's emailed, it shows up virtually, but the B1 is really just a class of visitor that you're given, and they sometimes stamp your passport and it says B1 in it, but there is no B1 physical paper issued. It's a business class visa. It's the same visa that people who say they're going to a banking conference get. Musicians get it for going to a music conference, but it's a little bit more confusing who's getting paid and that sort of thing. And that's why the distinction really is the public allowed to be at the event? If it's industry only, you can go in on a B1. If the public are allowed, whether you are paid or not, that is not at all the key anymore. It is whether the public is allowed into the venue, the park, whatever that may be. And if they are allowed in, then technically you're supposed to have a P2. And the reason why they don't allow the volunteer excuse is because we'd all just get sneaky and say we're volunteering. And that's why that doesn't really actually work at all anymore. Maybe it did in the past. And that's why you run into some people say it's okay, but it's actually not. Byron saying it does come in the mail still, which is good. Someone from Ka Records is asking what's a good way to find publicity, public relations agents. That's a great question. They are really key to your strategy. I'd also suggest most people choose a publicist or a radio person based on the region. So a person from Canada can not always do a really great job servicing the States. Someone from the States will not be able to service the United Kingdom, and so on and so forth. In general, there are some exceptions. They're hived off by geography and by style of music. So don't hire a folk publicist for your hip hop record, and hire a hip hop publicist for your folk record if you want to break into a hip hop. But generally, you really need people who know the market, they know the community that they're talking to. The best way I'd say is to look at artists who are a couple of steps further down the road from you. Look at what publicists they're using. Look at, where they got in. Talk to those artists. Email their managers. You'll find out some publicists look really great on paper. And then when you talk to the manager, they're like, actually, no, we were the ones who did all the work on that. And the publicist took the credit. So talk to the people who have worked with those people. And the same goes for booking agents and all kinds of people. Talk to their former clients and you will have a lot easier of a time. Keep in mind, not everybody gets along. Sometimes it's not always a good fit. It's kind of like calling someone's ex. They didn't always break up because they were bad people. Sometimes it just wasn't the right fit for the project. So keep that in mind. You'll almost always find someone who didn't work well with me, maybe, but I'm not a fit for everybody. So, but in that way, just look around at other people, spy on them, see what you like. Any other things to contribute on how to find a good publicist? Mariel?
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to add to your point that, looking at artists that are ahead of you is huge. That's like how I plan 90% of my career is I find people that I like the music they're making. I'm sort of doing a similar thing. Then I just follow their career rabidly and I keep up to date with who they're working with. And I also try and get in front of those people. So a big part of touring in the new market thing for me is sending out emails to people at those companies. If I've got management, I'm happy, I always hope management will do that for me and get some butts in the seats, but don't be afraid to give up a whole bunch of guest list spots if they're people that are going to do something for you. It's okay to lose a bit on hard ticket value if you're getting different value. And lastly, I would just say the one thing I wanted to add was don't rush breaking into any market, because you want to wait till it's worth your while. It's super expensive, and to make it worthwhile, you're going to spend way more than you're going to make the first couple times. So try and just be aware of that. Take your time, wait till there's demand. There's no reason to rush into it and play in empty rooms. That makes us all very sad. And you can do that for the rest of your life. But, if you have a chance to kind of build some buzz and wait, and then have a few really good shows, come home, wait another year, go do another 5 around New York, pick some major markets and try and work around them. Just don't rush, because there's no, you want to do it forever, right?
Thanks, Mariel. Those are all great, all really, really great points. I think we're almost at the end of our journey. There was one thing I wanted to add. Keep track of your data. The minute you start playing live shows, get yourself a little Excel sheet, date, venue, city, province, or state. Make those separate columns so you can sort them later. Capacity, gross tickets, net money, number of people there, how much merch you sold. Keep that. The minute you need a booking agent and you're ready to get a booking agent and you hand them that list, they will be so impressed, and they will also work better, and you'll have them like dialed in so well, because they'll know exactly where you've been, what you've done, what has worked and what hasn't. And also that spreadsheet's super great for taxes. But if you keep track of that for 2 or 3 years as your career is growing in different places, it can be really golden in the future to help you open more doors and grow your audience. That's my closing piece of advice. Thanks to everybody. I'm going to pass this back to Kareem.
Thank you so much, Tamara, and thank you to the rest of the speakers as well. Justin, Morris, and Mariel, that was fantastic. Yeah, what a great way to end things. We do have some more IMBs coming up in February. We have next week on the 9th is grant writing, and then the 28th of February we will have parenting in the music industry. These have not been announced publicly yet, so you are the first to know. So just keep checking our socials, and we'll be announcing those at least on Wednesday, I think, for the first one. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a lovely end of your day, and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
There we go.